All right, Clint of The Doorway too, hanging out with a couple guys from Row of Ashes. Appreciate you both doing it this evening for you, this morning for me. So I appreciate it very, very much. First of all, why don't you both introduce yourself and kind of say what you do in the band, and then we'll go from there.
Hey, I'm Dan. I play the drums.
I'm Chris, and I play bass and vocals.
Cool. So I want to kind of talk about it because you guys have 4 records that I've heard so far. I don't know if there's demos or things like that. I'm not going to go any further back than the first thing I heard was Let the Long Night Fade. Was the first record that I heard from you guys. Now that had a different vocalist on it entirely, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel that record compared to now in 2025 is two sides of the coin? Do you feel it's very different, or you just feel like you had a different singer on it? Do you feel like it's pretty much the same musically over the last 4 records?
Well, we've both probably got fairly different viewpoints with it, because with that album, it had been written before I joined.
Okay.
And so I got a call. They just wanted someone to do bass, and I was like, okay, I'll do bass for this album, because why not? You know, I wasn't really doing anything at the time, so I didn't really have any involvement with that. And then since then, you know, when we started writing the second one, since then it's been the 3 of us, and I think with this latest one we've like improved so much since we kind of started as the 3 of us. So I'd see it as a completely different sort of band and project, to be honest. Personally, I don't know what Dan thinks about it, but that's my sort of view on it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think that older stuff was more like we were writing kind of like full songs, and it was a bit kind of slower and maybe like a bit more kind of doomy or something like that, maybe. But I think since we had the kind of personnel changes and the way things are now with being a 3-piece, I think it is totally different. I think the songs are, you know, they're shorter, they're more aggressive, and I think the live shows and all that stuff has a lot more energy. So it feels like very different, really.
Yeah, and we've all got, you know, we'll come from very different angles. And so particularly when I joined, it was really not stuff that I was used to playing at all. And then since we've obviously played together for like 9 years now, it'll be the 3 of us. And we've just all really, really got used to how everybody plays. We can practice a lot more frequently as well, because we all live in the same place now. And it's just, you know, it's really sort of stepped everything up in that respect. So to answer your question, a lot, very different.
I agree. So that's why I was asking, because like listening to that first record, there's a lot more kind of a sludgy, doomy, less hardcore noise rock kind of indie rock vibe, where I feel like you're kind of growing into that. So that's what I kind of want to talk about. Like, I feel like you guys get tagged as like a sludge noise, like hardcore band so much. And I feel like that's so goddamn limiting. Like the sludge to me has lessened on every record, and the hardcore and more kind of indie kind of elements have grown on every record to me. So I kind of wanted to ask you, like, people always throw like the unsane and neurosis to you, and I feel like that's like the simplest goddamn terms of saying like, oh yeah, okay, well, Row of Ashes is kind of this hardcore band that uses kind of sludgy elements. But I want to ask you guys, and all, like, does that sludge tag kind of bother you now? Because I feel like with a brand new record like By the Ruin, the sludge is kind of just, it's an element. It's not really a feature of the bands. Yeah.
Like, I think, you know, Neurosis and Unsane are influences on the band, but I think that's just one kind of facet of it, like you say. So it doesn't really bother me. But to me, when I think of sludge, I think of like Iron Monkey and Electric Wizard and people like that, which Will is really, really into both of those bands. So, you know, but me personally, I don't really listen to that kind of stuff. I'm not really sure whether or not Dan does. But yeah, so that's the thing. It's because that's kind of like Will. The sludge bit is sort of Will's influence, but you know, it's there's a whole range of stuff in there, really. So I think just to say we sound like Neurosis is not, well. I don't think it's very. You know, there's an element of it in there, but I don't think it's as simple as just saying that. You know,
it's simplifying it so much. That's the thing I was kind of asking you about. But yeah, and Dan, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing, but I mean, you know, we play with a lot of those bands that are quite sludgy, and I think it is it's a cool scene as well. But I do think, as Chris said, I mean, I don't really listen to much of that stuff. Like I'm actually kind of into kind of crazy stuff that maybe isn't even metal music. So like I listen to a lot of hip hop and stuff like that. So like my influences are kind of very different to that. But you know, when it comes to, I think kind of like noise rock is a kind of a big influence on what we do. You know, bands like Will Haven and people like that.
That's like the common
definitely
ground.
that's probably had more of an influence on us, I think, than the sludgy stuff.
But also, I think that's where we have the common ground. Bands like Will Haven, like we get that a lot. And again, it's like we all really like Will Haven, but that's just one part of the sound. But it is they are one of the bands we all agree on.
Cool. Yeah, so I was going to say, like, when I listen to especially like the last two, the Bleaching Heat and this new record, I hear more stuff like Made Out of Babies or like Rosetta or like Pitch Blend or Rodan or like kind of bands that mix noise rock, indie rock, and kind of hardcore all in one kind of pile.
I don't think I've heard any of those bands.
Oh, but you should check them out. Pitch Blend's an old band. I will. Yeah, Pitch Blend is an old band from the late '80s, early '90s from Washington D.C. And they got lumped into kind of like that Discord scene, but they're not a Discord band at all. Like, because they were from DC, they kind of got like, oh, well, we're going to make them a Discord band. And they really weren't. And then Rodan's a band that I think you guys would really love because they're from Kentucky. And they mix like post-metal, post-rock, and kind of hardcore all together. And they remind me a lot of what you guys do right now. Like, it kind of gives me, and they were from the early 90s. So like, and literally when they started in the 90s, I think like 5 people went to see them. They broke up and became a huge band afterwards. So like, anyway,
that sounds like our gigs.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. It sounds very similar. But like I said, I kind of feel like there's more of a noisy kind of indie rock, hardcore kind of vibe in your music. And do you feel that you're moving in that direction, or do you feel like you've always been there and it's just kind of showing more now as you become more creative with the elements that you're laying in the music?
It's not like it's I don't think we've ever sort of set out to have a particular sound. I think when we write, we all bring the different kind of influences together with the songs, and it's kind of like not a sort of particular direction we're trying to head in. I think it's just the sum of the parts, if that makes sense. Like it's just what comes out really. But I think some of what you'll probably hear on the record is some of it is kind of like almost a bit, we play with time, and some of it's a bit improvised and things like that. And that stuff, I think, comes from being in a band now for quite a long time together. And we have bits that kind of maybe feel like they might be falling apart, but they're not quite falling apart because we sort of know how to deal with it when it falls apart. And so like I feel like maybe that's something that's happened, is like getting to know each other's sort of the way we play together. It helps with that.
Yeah. I think up to the sort of the direction you were talking about with the sort of the indie sort of post-hardcore, that's definitely Will's thing. Like he loves Fugazi, one of his favorite bands. I think did he learn by playing to Ian MacKaye? Well, Ian MacKaye is definitely a massive influence on him one way or another. Like he absolutely loves that. But one of my favorite bands is something like Pig Destroyer. Nice. Or there's like or like I like Slayer and stuff like that. And I'm going to see Slayer tomorrow. Actually, I like hardcore metal, extreme metal, and things like that. But as well as the common ground that we have, and then I also like stuff like post-rock. So, but like Dan said, it's as simple as what we can agree on, and whether or not we think it's any good, and whether or not we think they're good songs. There's never a sit down and go this specific direction. I'm not good enough. Will could probably do that. Actually, he'd probably know how to sit down and write an album in a certain style. He's good enough to do that, but I'm definitely not.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't want that, because like that would not be what you guys are doing. Like, Roll of Ashes to me is all those elements mixed together that make it interesting and make me want to hear what you're doing. So I appreciate all those. And like, I mean, funny you say like Pig Destroyer, but you can hear like elements of kind of like grinding guitars and stuff at times in it too, and the way your vocal arrangements are at times. Sometimes they kind of start fraying towards like the grindcore stuff. So. If
you take some of the more groovy elements, I mean, obviously we don't have blast beats and stuff like that, or trim. We have some trim like sort of guitars, but if you take some of the groovier riffs of some of those bands and the slower riffs of some of those bands, you can draw a line to an extent. I think definitely.
Yeah. So I kind of want to talk about, you've had 4 releases out. They're all on different labels, all on different formats. Is it frustrating not having everything on vinyl, CD, cassette, like all the formats? Like one's only cassette, one's only vinyl, one's only CD. But they're all digital. Is it just because the labels that you work with only wanted to do those formats at a time, or was it
Just the
just
way
like,
that
okay, let's just get it out, and if somebody wants to do it, great. I don't care what format. So.
pretty much.
I think if we had as much money as we wanted, right, we'd always go with vinyl.
Vinyl vinyl's very popular. I mean, relatively speaking, we've had a lot of requests for that, haven't we?
Yeah, I think like, I mean, you know, people buy cassettes and stuff, right? So that's kind of cool. But I think like we really want to put things out on vinyl. That's really cool, especially because like with this record, we sort of wrote it to be a record. Like it's kind of almost in two parts, and that, you know, from the start we were like, you know, we want this one to be on vinyl.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, you know, there's an aesthetic side of things on vinyl that people really like, and yeah, we got the CDs. So this one is on vinyl. I've got CD, and I was looking at it, I was like, oh my god, it almost looks beautiful. I mean, I've not bought a CD in years now. I use Spotify like everyone else. But yeah, I'm quite excited to see it all blown up instead of just looking it through this little piddly phone. You know what I mean? So
nice, very cool. So I want to talk about the last two records, particularly a little bit more, because those are the ones I kind of really dug into and got into, and then I kind of listened to the first two records because we were doing this interview. So Bleaching Heat and Tied in the Ruin, they kind of have a common theme to me. And I'm not just talking like the aggression. It kind of feels like that they have an angst to them that is controlled. Where on the first two records, it feels like it's just let's vomit every piece of like anger out, and then if melody happens, fantastic. But on these two, I feel like there was melodic elements mixed into the anger and the ferocity of the music. Am I seeing the right things here, or like am I way off picture on this?
No, I think it's a lot more musical and a lot more way better written. I remember when we did Bleaching Heat, we were all really proud of, but that came about in a really roundabout way, which is why to me it sounds a bit inconsistent. But with this new one, it was as consistent and as well thought out as we could possibly make it. So it's definitely you're along the right lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the Bleaching Heat, you know, we kind of wrote that like just after lockdown with COVID and everything,
and during
like, it was and during as well. So it was just like sort of like we need to get this out of our system. And then this last one, I think we've had a bit more time to think about it, and we kind of had the cover and the image for the album like before we had the music. We've never really done it that way around before, but I think that was kind of an interesting way to do it because there were themes that came out from having that image that we wanted to kind of go through into what we're writing. You know, things about it being sort of kind of slightly creepy and haunting, and that's the vibe we're going for. And then that plays back to what you were saying about the kind of the quieter bits in the record.
I remember we had a song that we were working on, and Dan basically said, I think we need to change or get rid of this because it doesn't fit in with the artwork. But that was like a really, you know, but actually it was, you know, it's not like we have it on the wall and we're kind of like, oh, bow to the painting so it tells us what to do or anything like that. But it did have, you know, it's like, is this, you know, menacing enough? Is it dark enough? Is it sinister enough? Like, does it reflect the artwork? You know, you see an album, you want it to, you know, you look at it, it gives you a preconception of what it's going to be like, and so we, to a point, we definitely work to that, I think.
Yeah, you're speaking to the choir here because I'm 52. So like when I went and bought records as a kid, I literally went to record stores, picked up a record, and was like, okay, the artwork is the reason why I'm buying this goddamn record. I could have this may be the biggest mistake I've ever made in my life, but holy shit, like. There are monsters and zombies and demons on this, and I'm gonna go buy this. Or like, wow, look at this landscape. Like, this must be something really like thought-provoking. So I want to just check it out. So no, I agree. Like, I can understand how art is gonna play to the feeling of the music because it needs to. Because if you buy a record and it's got corpses and zombies on it, and you listen to pop music and on it, you're gonna be very upset. Like, that's not what you want.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like. Not to slate them because I don't particularly think they're a bad band or anything, but Sleep Token, I mean, a lot of their artwork is very, very dark. You listen to them, and you know, other than admittedly crushing moments, musically they're not really reflective of what the a lot of the artwork is at all.
You're not
So-
slagging anything. Yeah, I'm with you all the way. Sleep Token is a bad influence on the scene because their artwork
I
looks
mean,
phenomenal, and then you look
I-
at and listen to the music, and it's not. So
No, I saw them recently. I was at Download and they headlined. We watched a bit of it, and it's like I think they legitimately have 3 really good songs, but the rest of it, I'm just like, and then there's elements of it. You're like, if you did this like all or most of the time, you'd be a really good band. But then they just, I mean, I don't really know what they're aiming for. Maybe it's just not for me. Maybe I'm just too old and don't understand these things.
okay. So I'm going to kind of ask this too, because on the new record particularly, maybe I'm just hearing things because I like a whole lot of different music, like I feel like both of you do.
Yeah.
But there's a shoegaze overtone on this new record that I have never heard on your other 3 records. And I am a huge kind of creation records kind of guy. Like I love My Bloody Valentine. I love Curve. I love bands like that. And guitar and drums specifically, Dan. So I'm going to ask you, like, I kind of hear that late 80s, early 90s kind of heavy reverb at times on both the guitars and the drums, which remind me of that shoegaze kind of vibe. Chris, you can talk about it in a minute, but I really want to kind of focus Dan on this for a minute.
You're on the right lines with those 2.
Yeah. So did you purposely bring that in?
No, I don't. I mean, I don't think that's a conscious thing, but I mean that's really interesting because we do listen to those bands a lot. Like, I know Will does as well. So like, it wasn't a conscious thing, but it's interesting you picked up on that because there probably are influences in there. And I never thought about like drum style wise, but yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
Especially on the last record, on this most recent one, Tied to Ruin, like I hear a lot of that kind of like My Bloody Valentine kind of drum sound on it, where it's not overly reverb, but it's bigger than it has been before. So I appreciate that. And then Chris, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, Will and Dan are definitely that side of things. I mean, Will, a large part of his approach is kind of, there's obviously the riffy side that he does and the more doomy side, but this whole kind of wall of noise sort of thing that you would get from shoegaze is absolutely his bag. And it's in things like in the middle of Imber, there's like I'm not going to sing because I'll just sound like an idiot. But in the middle of Imber, there's like a break in the middle after we sort of do the after that bit, and Will just basically just rings out a wall of noise while me and Dan are doing a more rhythmical thing underneath, and that is absolutely from that. I mean, I can't be speaking for him, but from what I know that he's into and his approach to things, I would say that it's absolutely from those sorts of lines, but put into a noise, metal, rock, whatever you want to call it, context,
I think the other thing maybe that I hadn't really thought about until you mentioned this is there's like some bits go quite simple. There's some bits that are a bit more technical, but sometimes the drums and everything we deliberately go, I don't know, it kind of goes simple, and maybe that's more of a kind of a shoegaze influence type thing.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
I think that's also about just not running away with yourself and being too like overtly complex, which I've definitely done in bands in the past. And sometimes there's no harm in just like dropping down to an open note, which we do, but that percussive open note sort of basic, primitive, it's good to have these moments because other than other places it does get quite chaotic. So if you did one or the other, it probably lose what's interesting about it, but mixing it up is important. So
cool. I was going to say you let this record breathe a whole lot more than the other records, and that's kind of what I really love about it. Like there's very aggressive moments, but there's, like I said, like you said, there's other very retrospective kind of feeling moments on it too, which is great, where it gives you a second to start. Okay, I know it's coming back, but I got a minute to kind of like reset myself. Where on like the record before, I don't feel like there's much of that. It's more relentless all the way through, and then the earlier stuff is super relentless. Like it almost is like a sludgy, doomy, hardcore band constantly going all the times.
I'd say it's more aggressive, but more experimental, and it's more melodic at the same time, which is the running joke that all the bands back in the early 2000s used to say that about their new albums, and then it just sounded. But I do feel like it's everything we were doing before, but with everything pushed in further directions. Like when it's heavier, I would say it's the heaviest stuff we've done for sure. But you've also got the more experimental, bits like at the end of Nerve. Wake, sorry, it's Wake, isn't it? It's called on the album. and that goes into a whole sort of post-rocky sort of section before it just gets really noisy. You know, things like that we never really had before, and yeah. So,
Dan, you want to add anything to it at all, or?
No, I think that all makes sense.
Cool. So I'm going to ask kind of a thinking man's question right now, and I kind of want to get both of your feedback on it, because I always love to get the band's thoughts on it. So let's say you're in a record store and some kid picks up your brand new album, and he doesn't know you're in the band, and he just looks at you and he goes, "Hey, have you heard this? What the hell does this sound like?" How would you describe it to someone that's never heard your band?
What do you say at work, Dan? What do you say to people who ask you what kind of band you playing when you're at work?
Oh, I don't say to anybody I'm even in a band.
Keep it quiet.
Keep it quiet. No, I mean, yeah, I would say, I mean, I think it kind of, I think our stuff, if I was speaking to someone who's not really listening to this kind of stuff or wants to get into new stuff, to me, it's got that kind of like feel of like the kind of botch type stuff, or These Arms Are Snake. You know, it's got that kind of like slightly out there, rocky, kind of noise rocky type feel to it. So like if you want to get into heavy music, you know, that isn't just about things being really technical, but also is about, you know, it's about kind of like things that have a bit more kind of almost like free time to them, and where the musicians are feeding off each other. Like if that's the kind of stuff you're into, then I think hopefully people would like our record.
Chris, you have anything that you want to add to that, or you want to let it be?
What Dan said, but I think personally, I think there's quite a big metal influence in there as well. Like not so much Dan. Me and Will are really into our metal, and that's definitely as much of a part of it as I think what Dan was saying as well. So I'd probably just tell him like Will Haven and Unsane, just because you got to start somewhere, or maybe a band like Canutes. Do you know Canutes?
Yeah,
maybe a bit like them.
Awesome.
I'd probably just throw those bands out because, you know, it's in the same sort of in the same ballpark, isn't it? But it's not entirely accurate. But I'd probably say that noisy, discordant, hardcore metal, something like that. If you know. But it was someone who knew nothing about it. So when it is someone who does know nothing about it, I'm like, you heard Slipknot and Metallica? Because anything that's vaguely out in that, you know what I mean? And obviously that's completely wrong, but yeah.
No, fair.
I'd also probably say come watch it live would be the other thing I'd say.
Yeah.
Before you buy the record. Come watch it live and then buy a record at the show.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, you give me a lot of influences of two bands in particular, and you might not know them. You may know them. I'm sure you know one. But Cult of Luna is one of them that you guys got to give me because they mix the hardcore metal and post-rock kind of together in a way you guys do it very simply. The other band is Brutus. I don't know if you know who they are.
Yeah, no, Brutus. Yeah.
So, like, not because of the female vocals, but because of the tension that you guys have. Like, they do this very quiet and it's super pissed off kind of mix that you guys do very well. And I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and I said, like, you know, there's not a lot of bands that I can say, well, if you like Brutus, you're gonna like this band. But like, I can throw you guys into like a select few of bands that can do that. So, like, that's kind of just yeah. Because especially the earlier Brutus stuff, like I know the new stuff is a little more kind of mellow and low key, but the earlier records, you are very similar to them, tonality especially. So. But cool. So I guess I'm going to jump into a kind of a different. Your themes are rather interesting. I don't want to kind of talk about your themes because I don't want to put my thoughts into it. But like, can you kind of talk about, especially on the last two records? Can you talk about the themes of the record and vocally where you were trying to go with Chris?
Oh God.
It's not very abstract. That's why I'm asking. Like, there's points and times when you listen to the record, you know what you're saying and meaning. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of at risk of sounding completely up my own ass. I got like fucking. I'd see phrases that I like in a book and just write them down. I did this. Okay. I did this with the last album, and both the last two albums. And I'd write it, and I would kind of use that as a starting point, and there are some kind of themes with it. Like some of it's like various, life experiences, getting a bit older, seeing various things happen to your friend, life events happening and stuff. It's sort of thing that happens to everybody. But I some of it is kind of like words that sort of conjure a sort of an imagery in a sense. Some of them, if you read them, you would get a sense of, I guess, foreboding or angst or whatever from it, but it wouldn't necessarily make any sense. You know what I mean? Some of it is a bit more literal, and some of it is just words that I think sound quite cool together, which is Mike Patton used to do the same. Like, not to compare myself to him, obviously, because he's amazing, but that was the approach that he used to use as well. And you get that with it. Faith No More, my favorite band, and you get that a lot with his lyrics. They don't necessarily, like, you got a line like, do you know their stuff at all?
Yeah.
So King for a Day, they've got, what is it? Don't let me die with that silly look in my eyes.
Yep.
Doesn't necessarily, obviously that's not a literal thing, but doesn't necessarily mean anything. But it's a very evocative phrase. You know what I mean? It kind of makes your mind just run off in all sorts of different directions when you hear that. And I guess that's a similar thing that I was going for. But yeah, overall, it's kind of a reflection on life and experiences and getting up, going to work every day.
No, fair.
No.
Absolutely fair.
Yeah,
no,
so you can only really write about what you know, but I'm really a bassist, and I'm a bassist first and foremost. I ended up doing vocals out of necessity, really. But then with that, I have definitely grown into it. For sure. I tried to, I know a couple of reviews, the later reviews said that it kind of sounded like there was almost like bits of melody within the vocal lines, which I didn't really think too much of before, but I do kind of, within screaming, I'll apply quite a few different sort of textures here and there to try to make it a bit more interesting. I think the one before was maybe a bit more monotone. Yeah. Sorry, I just rambled there.
No, this is good. And Mike Patton and Mike Patton projects are some of my favorites too. And my favorite song from Mike Patton and Faith No More is RV. That's just my absolute, and it's just because like you said, it makes no sense, but it makes complete sense. It's just this father losing his fucking mind and basically trying to live day in and day out in a shitty RV. That's basically what his life is. So no, and I agree. Sometimes a collection of words is just great. But I was gonna ask vocally because there are some Mike Patton-esque moments on there. So I didn't want to jump into that, but I don't hear the Faith No More side of things. I kind of
there's
hear
a lot
more,
of Faith No More. Bill Gould is my favorite bassist, actually,
well,
in that
I'm
very
saying,
sort
but
of rhythmical.
I hear a lot more Fatima's kind of stuff going on with you.
Who sorry?
The Fatimas, which is him with the guys from the Melvins. And
yeah. Oh, what you mean on bass or on vocals?
On bass. I feel
really?
I feel like you do a lot more kind of Fatima-esque stuff. I don't think it's more like the other projects he does, but when you play the bass, it almost has this kind of soundtrack kind of feeling to it. You are adding layers to what Dan's doing and what Will's doing on the guitar. As far as you are very textural. You are not just, to me, you are not follow the guitar kind of guy.
No.
And Faith No More to me, Gould is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, but he's a lot of okay, I need to follow what the synth line is doing more than anything in Faith No More. You don't do that. So if I was going to kind of throw that world in, I'd say the more the Fatimas kind of thing, because they mix that element of kind of soundtrackiness and kind of going.
Yeah, I think I kind of hold the fort, as it were, because Dan and Will can quite often go off and do very off the wall stuff, and when they do, I'll try to keep it with a bit more of a solid bass line for that reason. But then there's other parts where I will just go completely nuts and whatever. So yeah.
Cool. And then Dan, I kind of want to ask you, every record, your drumming is very different. I'm just going to be straight up in front because the first record, it's very dry and kind of bombastic. And now with this new one, I feel like you hold back at the right times and you let it go at the right times. Are you writing the drum parts for the song or just the feeling that you feel when you listen to the song for the first time? Drummers go two different directions, so I'm kind of really interested how you do it. So
I don't know. I mean, it can't really be the kind of the second one, because we don't really write songs in a whole go and on a hear it sort of thing. We write all the songs together, right? So it kind of all comes from feel. But I guess if I think about like different genres I've been into over the years, when I started playing, I was really into the Smashing Pumpkins. Like when I was like 15 or whatever, they were my favorite band. So Jimmy Chamberlain was like a big influence. And so like I've always liked the kind of, you know, lots of fills, almost fills within beats. And that's kind of something I try and bring into it. And then, you know, loads of other genres like you know, guys from Botch, Converge, bands like that. Like actually, there's a band in the UK, Rolo Tomasi, who like a really, really good band as well. And so those kind of genres definitely have an influence, but I try not to go too crazy, because I don't want the bits. You know, you talked about themes earlier and what Chris is doing with vocally and all that. I really want to make sure I'm not kind of taken over in those sections and leave enough space for the the other stuff that's going on. So yeah, I definitely try and dial it back, because I think I'd probably just go crazy and it'd just be me all over the tracks otherwise.
Well, I think we've all kind of learned, like it's like know when to get out the other's way. You know what I mean? And when I was younger, it was definitely like, oh, I'm going to play a million notes and I'm completely self-absorbed with how fast I can play and all that. And then now it's much more like all working towards a common goal. And there's bits like where, you know, we'll even say this, it's like kind of let's have Dan do something where he's really at the forefront and we're just doing sort of chugs in the background, for example, you know. Nice. And then there's other bits where we'll go completely nuts and we'll sort of steps, you know, everybody has their sort of, it helps me in a way. It's sort of like the music. God, I sound like such a pretentious dick. Sounds like the music's kind of breathing in a way, you know what I mean?
It's not pretentious at all. It's the truth. But Dan, I was going to say, like, Gish is one of my favorite records. So like the first Smashing Pumpkin record. So I can totally understand like where your drumming comes from on that, because Jimmy Chamberlain on that record, literally, like, he wants to show the world I am a fucking great drummer on that record.
Like,
when you listen to it, like, that is the first time I said, okay, it's the closest thing to a metal band that's not a metal band that I fell in love with. Like when I listened to Gish, I was like, they mixed like 70s hard rock, they mixed like emo elements and metal together, and kids all dug it. Like, and it was the first time I ever heard like kids digging all those sounds on one record. Normally you were on one side of the camp or the other, and so no, I love that kind of analogy.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, when I first started drumming, I like sort of stopped doing drum lessons, and I was just like, instead of that, I'm just going to like learn to play every single Smashing Pumpkins song.
Nice.
I probably so I can probably still play quite a few of those tunes now. Actually,
what did you learn?
Everything.
Did you? I could definitely like
if
I had to
I
if I had to pick one drummer
I got obsessed with it.
like,
yeah,
it would be Jimmy Chamberlain for sure. Yeah, I mean he's an amazing drummer though, so I mean, you know, he's one of the best there is for sure. So.
There's no shame in that if that's the one you're going to point to. Like, yeah, no, awesome.
Can you play Jelly Belly?
Probably.
Can you play the fills at the beginning of Jelly Belly? You can do that.
Probably,
we'll incorporate that into
next practice.
Practice.
Awesome. All of a sudden, there's going to be Smashing cover songs that are going to be live. I'll be like, oh, well, okay, I know where that came from now.
Did you ever hear a Cult of Luna's cover of Bodies?
Yep.
Yeah, that was pretty good, wasn't it? So,
yeah, it was awesome.
But actually, so I don't know if you know, there's a Black Sabbath tribute show being aired at the moment. It's on TV.
Going on right now, yeah.
Yeah, and I just got sent a clip of Billy Corgan singing Breaking the Law by Judas Priest, wearing a big long cape. And, well, it didn't, it's not that great. Check it out, it'll be online, I'm sure. So
I'm sure it's not, but you know what? That's still awesome that he's sung Breaking the Law.
Yeah.
Cool. So I just have a few more questions and then we'll kind of wrap it up. And then you guys can kind of tell me what you're doing as well too. So here's another kind of thinking question that I always love to ask. So are you surprised by any of the feedback, positive or negative, off this last record? Because I've been reading a bunch of reviews about it, and I may not agree with everything that I'm seeing read there, but I hear a lot of what they're talking about. But I never would have listened, like I would have never listened critically to what they're saying in these reviews if I didn't read them. So is there anything that like you've seen that has either been shockingly cool or like this guy has no goddamn understanding of what we're doing and he's just bitching about the things he doesn't like?
No, I mean they've all been really positive, haven't they? There was one review where it was kind of, it was an amazing, it was a good review, but he focused on how at the end of like Wake, there's like feedback for a minute, which, you know, is not a particularly outlandish thing, I didn't think. And for some reason, he thought that amounted to not great songwriting. And there was another thing that he singled out that just seemed a bit kind of random and arbitrary for my liking. But it was a good review nonetheless. And you know, not everything's going to be great, but yeah, in all, they've been amazing. I think Noise was a really interesting one. They NOIZZE, they did a really, really good review. But yeah, they've all. I think there's like a couple of comparisons to like various emo bands that I can't remember the names of. You just see a couple of bands sometimes, and you're like, I mean, I've never even listened to that band or whatever, or they're just completely off the mark. But generally speaking, no, I think they've done a pretty accurate job of it. So
yeah, I was going to say, I mean, what you just said about the shoegaze thing earlier today was cool. I've not really thought about that, but yeah, now you've said that, it is, you know, I can hear that. It is really interesting. On the last record, someone said there's like a trip hop influence on the last record, which there is. And again, I never really thought about it until someone said that, but that's really smart to pick that out, because that's, you know, we're from Bristol, right? Like we listen to a lot of that sort of stuff, like Massive Attack and that kind of thing. It definitely has I think that has some distant kind of influence on what we do. But with this record, yeah, I mean, I think mostly people have been into it, and it's nice that people are digging it.
Cool. All right, so I have two more for you, and this is going to probably be the toughest one for you guys to kind of give feedback on, because it's looking in the future. So let's just say like today was the last day the band was going to play music. All right, and like you're just done. Like, okay, you've made your records, you're done. Here we go. What do you want to be remembered for? Like, if today was it?
Well, album-wise, tied into Ruin, for sure. But also the live shows. I think the live shows over the last year or so have really, really kind of stepped up quite a bit, actually. And I think we've got to a point live where, you know, sometimes when you go and see a band and it feels like more of an experience. Bloody bigging ourselves up a bit much, but you know what I mean. It feels like there's really good chemistry. It kind of goes beyond what the three of us and what the music is when it's put in a live setting. And I kind of feel like this last sort of year, it's kind of taken on and been not just a bunch of blokes playing some songs and going for it. It's sort of taken on a bit more of a, polished is the wrong word, but very kind of like, you know, there's a really good groove behind it. There's a really good feel behind it. You know, it's pretty much every single time we play, we know we're going to play a certain way, and we never sort of let ourselves down, if you know what I mean. So I think a great live show and the last album would be the one for me personally.
Yeah, main one for me would be the live, the connection that you make with people when you play live. That's the thing. If the energy is coming across and you know people are getting into it, and they're getting into the new stuff they've written, that would be the main thing that I want to kind of get across.
And maybe being a bit different to not that we're like pioneers or anything, but we do try to, like, you know, quite often bands will come out and you sort of think, okay, I'll give it a go, and it just sounds like a lot of others. And I know any sort of genre has this, but we try to do something a bit different with it, and I kind of like people to select that out as well. Whether or not we are successful, I don't know, but I hope that we are. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from with it. So,
no, awesome. And let's talk about the new label, the Road to Masochist. How do you feel that it's working with them? And they seem to be loving you and pushing you rather hard. Like I said, I don't know much about the label. I talked to them a few weeks ago just because I was going to be doing this interview. But they seem to love you. So like, how do you feel everything's going so far with them? Is this going to be an ongoing thing? Because personally, like, it looks like every record has worked with somebody different. So is this going to be a continuation, or is this a one-off? Like, where are we at with it?
I guess it depends. I mean, I'm really, really happy with how it's gone with them. You know, I think they've definitely pushed us to further, obviously, than we have done before. Us getting on Metal Sucks was something I never expected to see. You know, and it just like, you know, all the reviews, and we did pretty well for the last one as well, actually. But yeah, it's definitely because kind of with labels, it's sort of in a way it's a stamp of approval, isn't it? You know what I mean? You're sort of then you're part of a roster of bands who people respect, and I do that. Like with Relapse Records, you know, there's a certain type of band on there, and that they will be of a certain sort of standard. So in a way, it kind of puts you in good company. I'm happy to, I would definitely go with them again. I guess it just depends on whether or not they like the next one and whether or not they think it's worth doing. But no, the switching has just been out of necessity, really, and whoever's been available to do it. There are a few people that we spoke to, like, we'd do it, but our waiting list is a year long or whatever. So it's really circumstantial. But I hope that we can carry on working with them for sure. I think they've been great.
Yeah, bit of a shout out to Marie just to say thanks for putting out the album, because you know, there's people who are kind of doing this stuff in their free time. They've all got jobs and they're doing this stuff to keep scenes going. And I think it's amazing, isn't it? Really, the amount of time people put into this stuff.
Yeah, you think to yourself, like, they're just spending all this time and effort to take a punt on a band that they don't, you know, they like us, but that's the only reason they're doing it, because they think it's good music that people deserve to hear. It's the same goes for promoters as well. I mean, it's a really selfless thing to do, so you can't help but respect them for it. So yeah, I mean, it's really quite amazing. So
awesome.
Fair play.
Yeah, no, cool. So the last question I'm going to ask before I kind of throw it over to you guys is live versus recording. How do you see the band differently? Like, what is a live show versus the record? Now, I've never got to see you live, so that's what I'm saying. Like, if I went to see you live right now, what would be the difference of me listening to these 4 records versus seeing you live?
It depends on the set we play, because we could just do a set of just straight up super heavy all the way through and just batter everybody about. But then we've also got the quite, you know, you can kind of, like with some bands, depending on their set, they put themselves across in a different light. So we a couple of times we open with Wake, for example, but then we go into a Moralist, like on the album, which is like a thrashy one. So you go to see this band and they start off with a post-metal song, and the next thing you know, there's like a thrashy doomy one, you know, mixes it up. Or I guess we could, for the sake of argument, just play a relatively doomy set, you know. So it'd be a mix, really, to try to, you know, and to try to kind of give it proper peaks and troughs and to keep people interested as well, whilst keeping it super heavy as well. That's the main thing. So
yeah, but I think sound-wise, we've mostly tried with the records to try and make them feel quite live. So I don't know if there'd be a massive difference between, you know, hearing the record and seeing us live, because we try and get that really kind of energetic performance when we record stuff, and hopefully that comes across on the record.
Well, we recorded live, didn't we?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. We're all in the same room, but with our cabs elsewhere. So we're all in the same room playing instruments at the same time. So it is live, and then Will dropped in some stuff afterwards. I don't even think I made any amendments, and obviously Dan didn't either. So yeah, it was just all live. So
cool. No, awesome. So what I'll do is I'll throw it over to you guys right now and kind of say, what are you guys up to? What's the next 3 months of your lives have to go with? Is there new music being written? Are you going to be doing tours? Are you going to be playing shows? Like, what's going on with the band?
We are playing in Camden in London at the Dev on the 18th of July. And then our album launch is in August on the 22nd. Yeah, August 22nd. So the London date is with a sludge metal band from Hull called Battalions. And local, have you heard of Urza? They're from Bristol. They're on APF Records. Kind of like progressive sludgy type stuff. They're playing it. And then here it's with Opium Lord, The Grey, and who was the other one? Oh, and Urza. And Urza again, yeah. Opium Lord, The Grey, and Urza. So we have actually started writing new stuff as well. But it's it's quite forward thinking, isn't it, Dan? It's quite experimental. So we need to whittle down exactly what we're doing with it. But there's some good ideas been thrown around at the moment, and we had quite a productive. Probably the first practice the other day was the one where I thought, okay, this is actually starting to get going now. So yeah, just get back to writing, I suppose, and just see what happens on the gig front. There's no tours planned or anything, but yeah, we have a. Oh no, that's a lie. I probably should. We're trying to arrange something for October, actually, like just a couple of weekenders and stuff. But we all have jobs, and people have got, you know, families and what have you. So we're all old, and responsibilities, you know, tend to get in the way of things. But where we can, it's what we want to do. So,
Dan, is there anything you want to end with?
No. I mean, I think just excited to get writing again. Really, I think like Chris said, these new tunes are kind of starting somewhere. They probably won't resemble anything like where they started by the time we finish them. But it's really exciting to be writing again.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much, Chris and Dan. I really do appreciate you doing this.
Yeah.
I don't do many interviews. I do a bunch of reviews, but I only really interview bands that I really enjoy. And like I
It's been
said,
a lot of fun, man.
the last 4 records that I've got to listen to were yours, kind of back to back to back before this. So like you're fresh in my mind, and I really think the last record that you just put out right now is one of the better records of 2025. So that's why.
Thank you. Yeah. No, that's
So-
amazing. How out of interest did you? Because I'm like, there's some guy in like Las Vegas who knows about us. Like, how did that happen? The internet, obviously, but.
So your kind of music has been very much my kind of music as well. I'm a musician as well. I'm signed to a label in the UK called Aesthetic Death.
Okay.
A friend of mine that is signed to the label as well kind of said, "Hey, there's this band called Row of Ashes. You may want to check them out." I did, and he was like, "I think it's going to be right up your alley." And you know what? It was right up my alley.
Nice.
And there you go. So he loved your last record. So like he said, he talked about you back on the last one, and I just was busy and I didn't think about it. And he goes, "Hey, they have a new record coming out. Stop being a slack ass and check them out." And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna check them out." So I did, and you know what? Here we are talking today. So that's how I found out about you. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I guess it's good to know. Good to know that word is getting out, I suppose. Well, it is good to know, obviously. Yeah. So that's really cool.
So absolutely. But thank you very much again, guys. Glad we could talk. Clint from The Doorway too, hanging out with the guys from Row of Ashes. Until next time, if you ever come to the U.S., please let me know. I will be more than happy to hang out with you folks. But other than that, like keep making music, and the next record that comes out, we'll talk again. So.
All right, cool, man. Cheers.
Cheers, Pete.
Have a good
You guys have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.